The 594th edition of the Four Corners podcast starts right now.
This is the Four Corners podcast.
Elton ready on his second attempt. That one is no good. They battle for it. Loose ball. Recovered Marvin. He scores. 17 seconds left. And he was fouled. Here we go. Lawson with a runner. No. The rebound. Hansbrough at the gun. Got it.
They were 4 for 24.
Hansbrough on a switch on Paulus. A deep three. And Green rips down the rebound in traffic. 4-on-1.
What a great job. What a terrific job in transition. I mean, you couldn't plan that any better as a coach.
Tipped away by Johnson. It's loose. Page. Johnson.
They're dancing in the arms. They're high-fiving. They're celebrating. They're going bananas on Franklin Street.
Pass to Britt, 15 seconds to play. Up high to Page, gets a screen from Meeks. Page driving in on the left, high off the glass for two. Louisville with 7 seconds. Jones has it, goes left corner, Black's here for three. Back iron, 1 second to play, stick up, no! Carolina wins it! The Tar Heels win it! 72-71. 6 seconds to go. Pinson comes front court. Pinson to May for the win. Got it! Luke May! He got it! 0.3 of a second! Luke May gives Carolina the 75-73 lead. Are you kidding me?
Inside 30 overall. Love, top of the key. Oh! Big time delivery.
Here are your hosts, Josh Marlowe and Anthony Pagnotta.
Hello and welcome into another live edition of the Four Corners podcast. We are powered by Carolina Electrical Services. Josh and Anthony back with you guys on a Tuesday night. We told you last time it was going to be a busy week of shows, and well, we're not undering delivering. We were live on Monday. We're live here on a Tuesday. Yesterday, we got the AP Top 25 released. Carolina made the AP poll in the preseason for the 20th consecutive year. Today, we got the preseason voting for all the ACC accolades, and it was kind of Carolina in some regard and maybe not so kind in another regard. And we'll talk about that a little bit later in the show. And we're also going to react to a topic that the Ion College Basketball podcast had when they had their ACC preview edition, where they tackled the uncertainty of Hubert Davis's job security. We'll kind of react to what those guys had to say about that as well. But we start every edition of the pod, as we always do, with the pod thought of the day, and it's brought to you by our new sponsor over at Legacy Arcade. Legacy Arcade is a casino where you can play roulette, blackjack, or your favorite slot games and multiplayer games. You see that promo code right there on the screen. If you scan that QR code and put in that promo code HEELS, what that's going to get you is $100 in free money upon registering your account with Legacy Arcade. Anthony and I are big blackjack guys. That's our most favorite game to play, but they've got all different kinds of games for you to play. And if you simply scan that QR code and use that promo code HEELS, you have $100 in free money to play with right off the bat. And another bonus about them, they have 24-hour customer support. So if you ever have an issue with your account, you can contact anyone at any time of day, and they put the money into your account instantly. It's instant redemption upon to your credit card, your banking card, or your banking account. So again, right there, when you earn money, when you win money, it's available for you guys right there. And they take all major credit cards, Skrill, ACH, and if you are an Apple user, if you live and die with your Apple product, they have Apple Pay coming very, very soon. So that's just another perk of playing with Legacy Arcade is, They honor just about any sort of card. They have Apple Pay, and they have 24-hour customer support if you need it. Let's now get into that pod thought, which we go to Tech Schramm for, and that thought is, quote, never let yesterday take up too much of today, end quote. And I do think, we're in the preseason, but I still feel like we catch ourselves talking about what was wrong last year, what happened last year. And at some point, we got to talk about this year. And I think, with the AP Top 25 coming out yesterday, the preseason ACC stuff coming out today, we can finally quit talking about yesterday and last year and start focusing on the here and now, because the here and now is very important. Carolina has been in preseason practice for roughly 3 weeks. They have a preseason exhibition next Friday on the road against a preseason top 10 team. We're 3 weeks inside from the start of the season. It's now 20 days. Yesterday was 3 weeks officially. We're now less than 3 weeks away from the start of the year. And so while so much of what happened yesterday or last year, if you will, has, certain topics and conversations that are going to carry on into the season, at some point we got to focus on today and the now. And I think the now is a good time to do that with Carolina learning what the media has expectations for them in the ACC this upcoming year.
Yeah, I mean, this is the time for us to move on, where I think for the team, you're hoping that they have moved on well before this and that they have not been focused on all that has been said about them this offseason and, the lack of expectations that they have coming into the year. You're hoping that this team is really just focused on what they can do this season, because they're going to need to be able to do that if they're going to be able to win at the rate that we think that they need to win at this year for Hubert Davis and really just for the health of the basketball program overall. You can't concern yourself with what happened last year. The only guy that should be even remotely looking back to last year and what happened last year is Seth Trimble. I mean, nobody else on this roster, that is a holdover from last year really did anything. So everybody's role is a little bit different than it was even at their previous stop. Or, for the true freshmen than it was for them in high school. So I think you're hoping that, that's been the message that's been conveyed to them by Hubert Davis is that, hey, we can't control what happened last year. We can't control the position that we come into this season. But, we just have to, go and take it day by day on the court and really find a way to make ourselves better as the season goes along. And that's the thing that I think we've been preaching really all off season. And again, we said it last night and we'll say it again tonight, probably. This is a team that is going to take time to get better, guys. They're not going to be great right out of the gate. I don't think they are. I don't think what the team that you see take the court against Central Arkansas is the team that you're going to see take the court against Duke to close out the regular season. I would hope not. I think this team is going to be able to take steps forward where last year's roster, it really was basically the same exact team that we saw take the stage in the first game of the season and the same team that took the stage in the last game of the season against Ole Miss. You're hoping that, things are going to progress as the season goes along. And I think this is a team that we feel like is going to be able to live this quote by, as throughout the year. And it's going to be something where, they're going to be able to put those games behind them as the season goes along and hopefully, eventually reach their peak.
All right, let's get into the main topic of conversation for tonight's episode. Last week, ACC tip-off made its way to Charlotte. Carolina was in town on Tuesday. Some of the other schools, they were in town on Wednesday. During that time, all the preseason voting took place. All those results were made public today, including the preseason ACC poll, which has Carolina come in third, which is where I expected them to be. They come in behind Duke, who's the preseason pick to win the conference, and then they come in behind Louisville. No first-place votes for Carolina, just the Blue Devils and the Cardinals were picked, or both of those programs received first-place votes. I'll run through the total poll here really quickly. Duke was number one with 34 first-place votes. Louisville, number two, 15 first-place votes. Then comes in Carolina. They were picked third. NC State fourth. Virginia fifth. SMU 6, Clemson 7, Miami 8, Syracuse 9, Notre Dame 10, Wake Forest 11, Virginia Tech 12, Georgia Tech 13, Pitt 14, Florida State 15, California 16, Stanford 17, and Boston College, they come in 18th place. I mentioned that I had Carolina. If I were to fill out a ballot, and unfortunately the ACC did not deem me important enough to do a preseason poll, but I would have had Carolina come in third. That's where I would have had Carolina. Now, I'll be honest with you. If I would have voted, I would have given Louisville a first-place vote because that's who I would have picked to win the conference. That's my preseason pick to win the ACC. I have Louisville first, Duke second, and then I have Carolina coming in third. And I don't think third's a bad place for a roster that, has 11 newcomers. And is banking on an international pro to be cleared and be a big part of what they're doing. And they're relying on a 5-star freshman to be a big part of what they're doing. Were you surprised, maybe in a good way, that Carolina came in as high as preseason pick to finish third? Or did you think maybe there was a scenario where Carolina came in fourth or lower?
I mean, yeah, I thought there was a scenario where they came in fourth. Any lower than that would have just been stunning. I mean, I can't think of a reason why you would believe that Carolina would be below that line. But I mean, yeah, I guess coming off of last year, nothing should really shock you. The thing is that with Virginia being picked fifth, that really tells you everything that you need to know. That's another first-year head coach. I think they're going to go with the stability that Carolina has, even though it is a roster that is completely overturning. But you see, new head coach at NC State, new head coach at Virginia, a lot of roster turnover for Carolina. Really, the top two teams in the conference are really the known commodities. You feel like, and I mean, Duke, that's a team that has a lot of new freshmen that are going to be a part of their team this year after, what the crop that left last year. But I guess you just feel like, especially with John Shire, that they've been consistent enough where they're going to find a way to be very competitive this year, if not win the conference again this year. Louisville, one of the popular teams. I think they're going to be a very popular team in the preseason for people to predict to go to the Final Four. With all the additions that they made in the transfer portal, not nearly as many as Carolina, but bigger names, big splashes that they made. You feel like they're a team that is going to be very competitive in this conference this year. So, I mean, those two, it makes perfect sense. I am going to tell you I was a little bit shocked. I really thought that the national media was going to be on NC State and that they would, some of the national media members that voted, some of the local media members that voted, many of them would pick NC State over Carolina because of everything that we've heard about how great Will Wade is, how great some of the transfer portal additions that they've made are. And I think they're going to be a really good team. Like, I can't tell you that, if I was voting, I would have them anywhere below 4. I think that they are clearly better than Virginia. I think they're clearly better than SMU. And there's a pretty steep drop-off after that. I mean, then you get to Clemson, Miami. I mean, yeah, those are teams. I mean, Miami, that's a team that could finish at the bottom of the conference again this year. Wouldn't shock me. Clemson, I mean, they've lost so much. So, I mean, there's so much drop-off. I think the top 4 really made a lot of sense. It was just which order were they going to be put in. I thought for sure that Duke was probably going to be number 1. Most people would trust that. And then it was 2 through 4 really was going to be where the debate started. But yeah, I mean, to me, this is exactly where, if you're Carolina, you probably feel good about where you end up on this list. But it provides a little bit of motivation for you too, because you didn't end up getting a first place vote. So this shows that there is still room for improvement this year, but that there is belief that this squad is going to bounce back.
Yeah, when you see Carolina come in preseason number 3, I think it says 2 things. One, this roster is not as bad as some people are leading you to believe, and that I think the more that we've gotten closer and closer to the season and people have done their homework on the people that Carolina has added, I think they see the upside that this roster does have, and they're not looking at the money that Carolina invested in it. They're just looking at the talent and the fit. and there's something to believe in. It also does reflect, I do think, where the ACC as a basketball conference is, where you can overhaul your roster the way that Carolina has and still be picked to finish top 3 in the league. Like, I don't know how many teams in the SEC, the Big 12, or the Big East, if they were bringing in 11 new players, would be picked to finish 3rd in their respective conference. I would have had Virginia 4 and NC State 5. The more that I've learned about Virginia, the more that I've heard about Virginia, they've got an international player that they're going to bank a lot on. And I do think, there's a lot of hype around what Will Wade's going to mean to this conference. Ryan Odom's a really good basketball coach. And his name is synonymous with ACC basketball. And I think he's going to be a big addition to the league. And I do think Virginia is poised to return to where Virginia should be, which is a program that's competing in an annual basis, top 4 in the ACC, making the tournament and advancing deep into the tournament. So, but I thought worst case scenario, Carolina come in 4. They come in top 3, no first place vote, though I do think that is a little bit of fuel to fire maybe for Hubert Davis and this coaching staff as they could continue to make their way through preseason practice. In addition to the preseason ACC poll, you get all the other awards and accolades for the preseason, and Carolina just with one name on those preseason award lists, and that's the incoming 5-star freshman Caleb Wilson, who was not even selected to the preseason All-ACC first team. He was resigned to being the second-team preseason All-ACC member. The first team consists of Cameron Boozer of Duke, Darian Williams of NC State, Marcus Burton of Notre Dame, Mikael Brown Jr. of Louisville, and Ryan Conwell of Louisville as well. The second team, Boopie Miller of SMU, J.J. Starling of Syracuse, Isaiah Evans of Duke, Bay Ndongo of Georgia Tech, and then Caleb Wilson rounds out that second team All-ACC team. He also received 1 vote for ACC Preseason Player of the Year and 2 votes for ACC Preseason Rookie of the Year. I think what's noticeable here is that there's no Seth Trimble, there's no Henry Visar. I do think maybe Luka's eligibility and him not being cleared maybe did impact some preseason voting as well. Let's start, though, with the freshmen. What did you make of Caleb Wilson getting some preseason All-ACC honors, but also being the only Tar Heel to earn those accolades?
Yeah, I mean, I think for him, it's great. I think that certainly is something that we sort of expected, that he was going to land somewhere in that group because of just how highly touted he is. Also, it's not a surprise that he lands there after some of what we've seen in the offseason. I think a lot of people have probably seen similar stuff in terms of the practice videos, in terms of some of the scrimmages that they had, and maybe they've looked and said, you know what, this young man is probably going to be one of the best players in this conference this year. In terms of the other guys, I mean, it doesn't really shock me that much. I mean, you look at, Seth Trimble from a year ago. I mean, he was good, but I don't think he was all conference caliber good. And I think that's part of the reason that, a lot of people will not give him the benefit of the doubt when it comes to putting him in the preseason All-ACC realm. I mean, 11.6 points per game, 1.3 assists per game, 5.0 rebounds per game. I mean, yeah, again, solid numbers. I think probably he's right on the outside looking in, being on one of those teams, probably an honorable mention type of guy. But, yeah, I think it makes sense. And then with, Vesar, I think the biggest thing with him is that you got to remember that he wasn't a guy that played more than 20 minutes at Arizona. So I think people probably have the same questions that we do about what does he end up becoming with more playing time. I mean, he averaged 9.4 points per game last season and 5 rebounds per game. Those numbers are good. I think they project well, and you're hoping that he is going to be a guy that can be a big contributor for Carolina this year, playing upwards of 25, 30 minutes, probably closer to 30 if we're being honest with ourselves here. and hopefully those numbers sort of, extend beyond that. I think this goes into what I was saying at the start of the show, which is that this team will get better as the year goes along. When we recongregate and talk at the end of the year about the all ACC teams, I think then we will probably see maybe both of those names show up. Maybe there's other names that show up as well. A guy like Luka Bogovac, I think, is certainly someone that we feel like could be in here based off of some of the scoring prowess that he showed at the international level. You think maybe Kyan Evans could be in there as well if he closes the year as strong as he did at Colorado State. Let's say he does something similar at Carolina this year, then maybe you're having the conversation about him. That's the thing with so many guys on this roster is that, yeah, even though they might not get the preseason recognition, I really think this is going to be a group that will, when we are talking about this team postseason, we are going to feel like there are some guys that deserve to be represented and will be represented on the all ACC teams at the end of the year. So I'm not really reading too much into it, but I think Caleb Wilson, very, very deserving based off of some of the stuff that we've seen from him this offseason.
I think it's important to remember that when we left ACC tip-off 2 years ago, RJ Davis was nowhere to be found, and he went on to have one of the best guard seasons in UNC history, was ACC Player of the Year, an All-American, and was in the running to be the National Player of the Year. Not saying that's what Seth Trimble's going to become. If he is, fantastic. I'm here for that. But these voters get it wrong, and this is why I pretty much come back every single year and kind of get frustrated that the ACC never gives me a voting platform, because my voting history is as perfect as anyone in the history of voting. So if I were voting, this would not be an issue. There'd be more Carolina guys represented. But I do like this. You know why? Because it makes it easier for Hubert Davis to get on his butt in practice and to really harp on him and say, dude, as great as you've become, as far as you've come in your 4 years, all the hard work you've put in, they still don't think you're that good, bro. They think you're just some ice cream shop owner. So get your butt in the gym, work on your shot, be a better defender, be a better ball handler, become a better basketball player. That way, when we get to the ACC tournament, they can't help but put your name on the ballot and give you big-time voting. It is kind of, and I don't know if there's a way to go back and figure this out, but I wonder how many times Carolina has gone to ACC tip-off. They've taken players with them, and no one that they took with them got preseason awards because they took Trimble and Bizarre. Caleb Wilson was not, an honored guest in Charlotte last week. I don't think that's happened too often since that has become a thing. Speaking of Caleb Wilson, would a second-team All-ACC season, would it be underwhelming when you look at the fact that he's a top 10 recruit, he's a 5-star that has – I don't know in the modern era of recruiting if we've seen a player boast more on social media more than we've seen Caleb Wilson boast. And I love that. I think when Carolina has that edge, they have that attitude, it brings out a different side of them, and they have a different toughness to them. But with that being said, he's got to back it up. I do think he's poised to back it up. But do you think it would be underwhelming if he only was a second-team All-ACC member? Should expectations be higher for him? And will we expect to be a one-and-done season in Chapel Hill?
At this point, some of the seasons that we've seen from some of these 5-stars that have come in here, I'm not going to go to that point and say, man, we need you to be a first-team guy or it's nothing. I think it also depends on what the rest of it looks like. What does some of the other guys that make it to the first team look like? Are they just having unreal seasons? And even him, being a guy that, let's say he averages, 16 points a game, averages 8.5 rebounds, 9 rebounds, somewhere in that range, but just misses out because there are a couple other forwards that are really playing out of their mind in this conference. Well, then I don't think you really worry about that. I'm not really worried about where he lands as a first-team All-ACC member, first-team, freshman All-American, whatever. I would love for him to be on that list, and I think he probably will be on the freshman list. But I mean, yeah, if he doesn't end up getting first team all ACC honors, but we love the way that he's playing, then I think we can live with that. That's the thing. All that stuff is so subjective too. It really just depends on who's voting for that stuff. So there are forwards that could have really strong seasons. Guys really get attached to certain guys, some of these media writers, and they end up just not putting him in there. So, I mean, I'm not going to be too worried about that. You're just looking for a guy that, once you get towards the end of the season, really is either your best player or your second best player. And the reason I say second best player is we've said it. We don't know if he's going to be the leading scorer on this team. So whoever ends up being the leading scorer will probably be the guy you will refer to as the best player on this team, especially if it is Seth Trimble. Because if he is your leading scorer, we know what he does defensively. He's going to be one of those guys that, is going to be recognized as one of the best perimeter defenders in the entire country again this year. And I think that would probably allow for him to be the best player on the team. But I mean, yeah, as long as he's one of the top 2 players on this team this year, I think you can feel like that is a success for Caleb Wilson, no matter where he lands on some of these postseason all-ACC, all-American type lists.
I think the good news is that's his floor. I think worst case scenario, he's a second team all-ACC guy. That's how good I think he is, and I think that's the type of production he's going to put up right away. The good news is that if he does elevate himself to first team status, I think what that does, I think that elevates Carolina's standing in the conference. If he is every bit as good as he says he is, and he's declared he's going to be, I would not be surprised if Carolina wins the ACC. I would not. Duke is not going to be as dominant as they were a year ago. And Louisville, while you love that roster is going to go as far as their shooting takes them, because that's what that roster is built on. If they have a rough shooting year, there's not really a pathway for them to win games in a different manner, because that roster is going to be so dependent on how well they shoot the three-point shot. So I think that's what you got to like about this if you're a Carolina fan is – I think for Wilson, second team is the floor for him, for his talent. If he elevates himself to first team as an individual, I think it'll elevate Carolina's standing in the ACC to where maybe they're competing for an ACC regular season title and putting themselves in the position to get, a high seed come NCAA tournament time. So, I'm not as frustrated with him being on the second team as maybe some Carolina fans are going to be, and that's your right, because, maybe you watched him a lot more than we did and have leading up to his time as he gets ready to make his way into college basketball. But, I mean, nonetheless, if he's a second-team all-ACC guy, I do think Carolina is in position to have a really good season. If he becomes a first-teamer, Carolina could be in position to have a great season. Let's now transition to what another podcast had to say about the Tar Heels. If you know by now, I'm a longtime faithful listener to the Eye on College Basketball podcast. I bring their producer, Nada Edwards, on all the time. Hint, hint, wink, wink. Nada will be on probably sometime next week talking Carolina basketball with us because, I can't get Gary Parrish. Even though I'm balding, and I'm a Met fan like he is, I can't get Gary Parrish. I can't get Matt Norlander, but I can get their producer, and we'll have him on here sometime in the near future. But Gary Parrish and Kyle Boone conducted their ACC preview last week. And with that, they did the top 5 storylines in the conference. When talking about Carolina, someone, especially from the national media perspective, the focus, the conversation is going to be on the job status of Hubert Davis. And so Gary Parrish posed the question, simply put as this: if he believed, he asked Kyle Boone if he believed that Hubert Davis would be Carolina's head coach on April 1st. That's just a date he picked out of his head. But if you're in April 1st, that means you're at the week of the Final Four. Hopefully, our hope and prayer is Carolina is still playing that deep into the calendar, but Obviously, there's a scenario where that's not the case. Kyle Boone, very forward, very honest. That's why he's got the nickname Strong Jaw. He was very adamant where he said he does not believe that Hubert Davis will be Carolina's head coach on April 1st of next year. As for Gary Parrish, he just simply said Hubert Davis's next bad season will be his last season on the bench in Chapel Hill. Let's look at Kyle Boone's answer first. I don't know how many people are going to go on record saying that they think that they believe Hubert Davis will be fired at the end of the season, but he's one of the few guys that I know for sure is willing to put that out there for public consumption. If he is right and it's as adamant that it's a no, I mean, what does that really look like for Carolina? Is it they finished 5th in the ACC and they're one and done in the NCAA tournament? Is it they miss? I mean, because I think we know if they miss the tournament altogether, he's not coming back.
Right.
So I guess what I'm asking you is what do you think the path would look like for Carolina to still maybe make the tournament, but for them to wipe their hands clean of Hubert Davis at the end of the season?
So, yeah, I mean, it's basically what is the best that Carolina could do this season and still say, you know what, we haven't seen enough. We need to move on. That would probably be, again, you're another season, which, I mean, yeah, if we're sitting here today, we're looking at the preseason ACC polls. We're probably thinking what? Maybe 5 teams make the NCAA tournament. And even that, I think, might be being generous. I mean, I don't know I don't even know if that's that many are going to make it. I think Virginia will probably be a team that will be on the bubble. You probably believe that NC State will be a team that would be on the bubble. If Carolina is in that spot, then I would believe that they are going to probably be looking at Hubert Davis and saying, okay, now it depends on what you do in the NCAA tournament. If they go one and done, or if they make the play-in game and then bow out in the first round of the NCAA tournament again, then I think they're probably going to, again, it's going to be at least having a serious discussion. There is no Roy Williams here, guys. There's not that clear guy that's taking the job. And if you go national with the search, you could say, well, there will be people banging down the door to take the Carolina job. Are we 100% sure about that? You look at especially some of the SEC coaches that you would be looking at. I mean, they're going to be getting far more money in the SEC than they're going to be getting in the ACC. You would hope that, Carolina would be able to tell them, hey, we're going to make up those margins in terms of how much money we're going to sink into the basketball program due to the revenue share and everything like that. But it's known that the SEC is going to make more revenue. The Big Ten is going to make more revenue than Carolina is going to make in the ACC. And so we're in a weird time in college sports. So it's not necessarily a guarantee. I think, though, if they do end up with the scenario that I talked about, which is bowing out in the first round of the NCAA tournament while being a bubble team, then I think they probably do end up moving on from Hubert Davis. But the definite no, to me, the only definite no that there's absolutely no way he comes back is if they miss the tournament. If they miss the tournament, he will be fired immediately, and Carolina will be looking for a new head coach. Because at that rate, if he misses the NCAA tournament, and especially if Wes Miller ends up making the NCAA tournament this year, that makes the job that makes the solution a little bit easier if you want to stick within the family. But again, I think that's really where it matters is what happens outside of Hubert Davis in the Carolina family. Is there somebody that steps up and shows that they are capable of being that next guy? Because until they do show that, I don't have the confidence that they will move on, because I just don't know if they feel overly confident in landing another head coach. And I'm going to tell you, people will say, oh, this is the football guy bringing up football here on the podcast. What's going on with the football program affects basketball, because if they have to move on from Bill Belichick and sink that much money into him, I don't know if they're going to be able to go out and spend the way that they want to for a new head coach if they do say, hey, we're going outside the family, we're taking this search national. So that's another element that you have to bring into effect here.
Well, I disagree with that. If Carolina basketball gets to the point where they think they got to move on and they want to go pay big bucks, they're not going to let what they've invested into football stand in the way. They're just not. And they shouldn't, because the basketball program is the one that you've got to maintain the reputation of, because it's what you're known for. So I don't think if they buy out Bill Belichick and they bring in James Franklin, that's not going to hinder them from going and spending big time in basketball. Does it impact it? Yes. Carolina's gone all in football, and in fact, they'll have more money to spend on basketball. Like that's because that's the smart way of doing business, is to make as much money as you can in football to then supplement the more important program, the more storied program, the program that your fan base is more passionate about. And so you got to commend them for doing that. And so there will never be a scenario where Carolina will cheap out on basketball expenses in the name of football. And I'm very confident in saying that. What I'm real interested in is, let's say Carolina hits and they go 28-6 and they're a 2 seed in Selection Sunday and they get past their 2-15 matchup. But let's say they go down the round of 32 in a 75-70 game to a 7 seed or a 10 seed. What do you do? Because you have the regular season success that, to be quite frank with you, we're still kind of demanding, because you've only had 1 year from under his guidance where from start to finish you were a consensus top 10 team. And 1 out of 5 years is not the standard. But if he does that this year, that's 2 out of 5. But let's just say March happens and you get upset in a hard-fought game. Then what do you do with him? I think that's why I think Kyle Boone being so adamant about him not being here on April 1st. I mean, give him credit for having an opinion and vocalizing it. But I do think, you got to see what it looks like and ultimately how it plays out. Because the only way I can confidently say he's not our head coach is if Carolina doesn't go to the tournament. Because if we get to Selection Sunday and they're on the bubble and they get left out, I'm not going to be able to make the argument for him to be the head coach. And at that point, I probably would have moved on and convinced myself they need to go in a different direction. But, you saw where a lot of John Calipari's early tournament exits really forced his exit from Kentucky. I wonder, what does Carolina do if it's a 2-10 upset? Because you would, at that rate, won a lot of games you didn't win a year ago against quad 1 competition, but you're still not advancing deep into the NCAA tournament. And sometimes this is why I think it'd be easier if Carolina was a lot more forward, a lot more vocal about he's got to do X, Y, and Z to maintain his job. Now, they're not going to do that publicly because you're setting your coach up to fail, but it would make it easier for those of us that do podcasts to evaluate this type of topic. That's going to be the thing we talk about after every loss. And whenever we talk about losses for Carolina, we're not going to complain about shooting, rebounding, should they have full court press, whatever. We're going to talk about should the head coach be fired. So hopefully we're not doing as many losing podcasts this year as we did last year. On the flip side, when you look at Gary Parrish's opinion, where he said the next year that Hubert has a bad year will be his last, he's effectively become what Tom Crean became at Indiana, where it got to the point where, the year before Tom Crean got fired, he won a Big Ten championship. I mean, and let's, in our lifetime, Indiana winning Big Ten titles wasn't what it was in the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s. It wasn't happening as frequently as that program has historically won conference championships. And so, is that fair for Hubert Davis? So let's just say they hit this year and they are that 2 seed I talked about, but they advance to the Sweet 16. They get to the Elite 8. Heck, let's say they make the Final 4. Would he still deserve to be, let's say the next year they're a 6 seed and they go 1 and done in the tournament? Is that fair to a coach that at that rate would have, still had, a regular season conference title to his name, coached in maybe 1 or 2 Final Fours, and coached in a national title game? Like, if he has a big season this year, shouldn't that buy him more grace than just having another off year and getting canned?
Yeah, I would say so. I would say if he has another big year, you start. I'm not going to say you start to put the bad years out of your head. But, I mean, at the same time, I mean, when you're comparing him to Tom Crean, I mean, the thing about Tom Crean was Tom Crean missed 5 NCAA tournaments while at Indiana. First 3 years that he was there, he didn't win more than 12 games. Those teams were bad. And so that really got him off on a bad foot. And then,
that program was on probation too.
Yeah, I mean, it's true, but I think that probably got him off on a bad foot. They probably believed that he should have been able to win more, especially when you're looking at, what Carolina was able to do while under probation during that time. I mean, granted, you had a much better coach, but I think they probably thought that Tom Crean was a guy that would at least be able to get them to compete, get them close to making the NCAA tournament. Then you have the successful stretch that he goes through. But in between it, with the successful stretch, you have that 17 and 15 season in 2013-14 where they end up missing the tournament outright. They get in 2014-15, but they're a 20 and 14 team that sneaks into the NCAA tournament. It wasn't like things were easy for him, where I think with Hubert, I mean, yeah, if he ends up missing the NCAA tournament again, then yeah, I think he probably does end up getting fired because you can't miss the NCAA tournament at Carolina. So maybe in that respect, I do kind of agree. The next bad season in terms of that missing the NCAA tournament, there's a good chance that Hubert will be fired, but it depends on what level of success you're talking about. I mean, the 2015-16 team, they get eliminated by us in the in the Sweet 16. If Hubert makes a run, and let's say for some reason this year everything comes together, very similar to what happened in 23-24, but he actually ends up making a run in the NCAA tournament, gets to the Elite Eight, or God forbid the Final Four. If he makes it there, I think that buys you a little bit more time. Or even if for some reason, like let's say everybody just leaves off of this team, there's a bunch of guys that can go to the NBA based off of this season, and he ends up having a roster that's completely overhauled next year and, is right back on the bubble, is struggling a little bit. Yeah, that probably buys him a little bit more time. But that's the thing. It depends on what it ultimately looks like, because for Tom Crean, even though he had successful seasons, he didn't make the deepest runs in NCAA tournaments. Hubert Davis has proven to you that he is capable of making a deep run. He has made it to the final Monday night in his first season as a head coach. So I think it's more possible for Hubert Davis. But yeah, I mean, I could see another bad season. Like let's say Carolina this year is like a 6 seed, ends up making it to the second round of the tournament and then bows out. Okay, that's a solid enough year. But at the same time, if you miss the NCAA tournament the next year, yeah, you're probably going to be fired. I'm not going to lie to you. That probably ends up being the end of your job. But I still think that doesn't mean that, I wouldn't take the season that he's having, that I said he'd have right now, if it leads to him the next year being able to build off of that and ultimately get a little bit further into the NCAA tournament, which would hopefully be what actually ends up happening.
Yeah, like in my opinion, if Carolina gets to the Final Four, then I think we're not talking about his job security for the next 3 to 5 years. That's where I individually would be at, because that'd be 2 Final Fours in 5 years. That means 40% of the time he's been on the job, he took Carolina to the biggest stage in college basketball, therefore meeting the standard. I think if he makes his second weekend, I think it extends that conversation probably a year, maybe 2 years at the most, but he'd probably be in a situation where next year he'd have to produce once again. If Carolina is maybe one and done, or they're out in the round of 32, I do think they're going to look at what the totality of the season looks like and then really kind of do a firm evaluation upon him, which is which is why, like, we've said it, and I'll continue to say it. The best case scenario for him and the team and the health of this program, short term and long term, is for them to win and win 25 plus games, compete for an ACC regular season championship, compete for an ACC tournament title, and get a top 3 seed line on Selection Sunday. That's the best case scenario, because then a lot of these conversations just go away. We're not having them, barring a horrific loss in the NCAA tournament. And I think, am I confident to say that they're going to do that? I'm not. Are they capable of doing that? Yes. I would not be surprised if we get to Selection Sunday and Carolina's one of the first, 9 seeds you see on your bracket. I would not. I would not be surprised if this team, challenged Duke and Louisville to win an ACC regular season title. I would not be surprised if they won the ACC tournament. I think Hubert values it more than Roy Williams did. I think there's a greater sense of purpose for them in that event, because I think Hubert Davis played in it, so it means something more to him than it did to Roy Williams. So there's a potential for them, even though they're preseason ranked 25th and only picked to finish third in the ACC, where they achieve the type of things we expect every year from this program. And now it's about this team coming together and doing what's necessary to become that type of team. But if it happens, I'm not going to be surprised. Kind of like, we were caught off guard 2 years ago. I thought that team had potential, but I think we were kind of caught off guard how good they were when they really emerged as a clear-cut national title favorite in January of that season. And I'm not saying Carolina's going to do that this year, but if they emerge as a Final Four contender, I will not be surprised, like maybe some in the fan base might be, some in the local media might be, and then some of those in the national medium might be as well. One last thing to discuss before we get out of this edition of the podcast, a closing note, if you will. Some interesting or just an interesting thing that came out today involving former Carolina basketball player Marcus Ginyard. He was named the UNC Director of Special Projects. Marcus is a former, guest of the show. We've had him on at different times since his playing career overseas came to an end. He does do some commentary work, does a really good job for ACC Network, and I think ACC Network Extra or ACC Network Plus. He's gotten in the broadcasting side of things, but this is a real cool opportunity for him. You just reading the write-up on Go Heels. It says, quote, "In this position, Ginyard provides high-level operational and strategic support to the Chancellor, the Chief Strategic Officer, and the Vice Chancellor for Finance and Operations. His responsibilities include supporting the Secretary of the University and work with the Board of Trustees, coordinating trustees' special projects, representing the university at special events, and advancing university initiatives in partnership with leaders across campus. Ginyard will also play a key role in community engagement and planning efforts for future development of Carolina North, which was maybe the future home of the UNC basketball program, working closely with the university and community partners to advance shared priorities." So this is, a firm example of when you come to Carolina, it's not a 4-year decision. It's a 40-year decision. He's been in business ever since his playing career got done. I've literally interviewed him when he was coming out of business calls and meetings. So it's something that he's got a lot of experience in. He's going to be an asset to the university in more ways than one. Just a pretty cool note to see. I'm a former Carolina basketball player still being involved with the day-to-day operations of the university. With that, folks, it is going to wrap up this edition of the podcast. In the meantime, we will direct you guys to the website. That's HeelToughBlog.com. All the news today from ACC preseason voting can be found on the website. All the news yesterday from the AP preseason poll can be found on the website as well. So go and check out those 2 articles. Anthony has you covered with a very important Bill Belichick press conference. He has his takeaways up on the website as well about that. I'll be back tomorrow on a Wednesday on the football side of things doing a football podcast about said press conference. But we encourage you to go to the website every single day. That's HeelToughBlog.com for the latest and best coverage of Carolina basketball and Tar Heel football. As for the podcast, you guys know where to find us. Every major podcasting platform. Simply search the Four Corners Podcast and we will pop up. There, we encourage you guys to rate, review, and subscribe. That way you don't miss any audio editions of the show moving forward. If you're a video consumer of the podcast, the best way to be notified when we're live is to like and follow us on Facebook at Heel Tough Blog, on our YouTube channel at Heel Tough Blog, and at my personal Twitter account at HTB_Josh. With that, folks, it is going to wrap up, though, this edition of the podcast. I want to thank Anthony once again for hosting with me. We want to thank all of you for watching and listening. And as always, go Tar Heels.